I wanted a lot of freedom and flexibility in my life, and I found out very quickly that I did not have that. And I'm like, how do I create a model for people? How do I create a model for myself that doesn't just replicate the problem on a smaller scale, that actually solves it, that actually creates freedom, flexibility, that drives people to make sure that they can stay in the profession and not just have to scale with more people raising their prices, a bunch of staff that they don't want. That's huge for us. So when I started my business, it was really like, why don't I create something for myself that has really high value touch points in person, but ultimately like gives me stability, gives me flexibility, gives me recurring revenue in my physical therapy business, which is just like something that was unheard of.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on the
What's going on,
pod.
brother?
Thank you for inviting us to this awesome villa, man.
This
is great.
is my house, so you're welcome.
No, why don't you just tell us, like, where are we right now and what brought us here today?
Yeah, man, we are in Puerto Aventuras, just south of Cancun.
Mhm.
We're here for a mastermind together
Mhm.
with our buddy Dan.
Mhm.
And man, it's been a jam-packed weekend of, learning some stuff and reshaping some beliefs and discovering some things about like who we are, what we do. It's been pretty powerful stuff.
So someone's just clicked on this video wanting to achieve something, wanting to overcome something.
Yeah.
What's some of those things that you can share and what makes you someone they should listen to?
I think the biggest thing is like, at the end of the day, man, like we're all trying to figure this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people have this feeling of imposter syndrome that like you have to have it all figured out to start.
Right.
But like the best part about business, I think for me, is that every time I try to focus on the outcome, it's like it just becomes more about like figuring out the journey. And there's so much more resistance when you're like outcome focused rather than like I know Dan says like be a scientist. Like one of the things that I've always told my clients is like, I want you guys to think like a chemist. I want you to think of all the variables that you can manipulate. And I want you to think of how those variables affect the outcome rather than just like being focused on like doing this one thing. And so that's always kind of been something that's important to me in the journey and just constantly experimenting, man, you know, and knowing that like even when you feel like you have it figured out, there's still stuff that you can work on.
You find out less.
Yeah, you find out that you don't have it figured out.
So why don't you walk us through some of the symptoms that you help solve, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, someone's watching this right now, they're your ideal customer, and they're in pain. They're in a situation they are not ideal, right? What's the vision for them and what's blocking them from really achieving it?
Yeah, man. So, I mean, my background is I'm a physical therapist by trade. And a big thing for me was like, I wanted a lot of freedom and flexibility in my life. And I found out very quickly that I did not have that when I started practicing. And I think it's also one of those things where like you think it's going to be different when you're going through school. Like you think you're gonna find your dream job, and then you realize that like your dream job isn't so dreamy. And so the big thing for us, for like coaches and rehab professionals, is everything that we've been taught to do is just tied to time. It's like everything is about selling your time, putting you on a schedule. You're almost like so beholden to your clients that like you don't get to live the life that you want to live. And in some instances, it's like the rehab profession has kind of become like this martyr in healthcare. So the big thing for me when I started practicing was I was like, I don't want that as my life. I really wanted a model that allowed me to generate revenue, not being tied to a schedule. I really wanted something that allowed me to get client outcomes that didn't require them to be in person. And I was lucky enough to kind of start doing some work where like everything I did was online, right? So I kind of went from like the spectrum of like everything's in person, there's all these limitations, and then like everything's online, there's all these limitations. And so when I started my business, it was really like, why don't I blend those two? Why don't I create something for myself that has really high value touch points in person, but ultimately like gives me stability, gives me flexibility, gives me recurring revenue in my physical therapy business, which is just like something that was unheard of. So that was a huge driver for me.
Wow, that's incredible. So let's get into some of these situations, these time, like we are so boxed in, like they feel like they can't get above water.
Yeah.
So it's like how do we break out of that? Like someone who's working 12-hour days,
Yeah.
that's like can't take a vacation
Yeah.
without sacrificing some type of profit. Like
Yeah.
what can we do to get out of that cycle? Like take us through a little bit of a maybe step by step.
Yeah, so it's funny, man. I kind of had this revelation one day where I'm watching my client like do an exercise called a monster walk, and I just kind of had this like epiphany that was like, man, like my ideal client doesn't need me to be their babysitter. Like my ideal client is autonomous enough in the gym, has a high enough training IQ that like when I give them something to do, they care about their health enough that they're going to do it. So in the PT world, we have something that's called a home exercise program. It's like you come in, I say, Kyler, dude, here's your things for your shoulder. And it's a piece of paper with 3 sets of 10 written down on it. And like nobody did that. Like nobody did their home stuff.
Yeah.
And so when I started working with my clients, it was like they were doing that, but like they wanted more access to me. They wanted more like me in their pocket. Like how could I help them modify the workout that they were going to do or make a training decision?
Right.
And so really what we did is we kind of said, hey, look, like we're not really going to give you a home exercise program anymore, but what I can give you is what's called a prescriptive exercise program. And what that is it's actually like a complement to your in-person sessions, and it's $300 a month. It gets you access to me, it gets you messaging access to me, and basically we're going to do that beyond your in-person sessions so that we actually get you back to CrossFit, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, pickleball, golf, whatever it is. Like that piece of the journey is going to happen beyond us working in person. And so the prescriptive exercise program was really the thing that we kind of layered into our model that allowed me to kind of move away from this, like I call it like the revenue roller coaster, this like feast or famine where you're either finding clients or servicing clients. And then the next month you're starting at zero because you got to collect all this money for the sessions. And next thing I knew, man, like I had, $3,000 in recurring revenue in the business, $4,000, $5,000. My floor was no longer zero. It was like a whole like stress-free life at that point.
So you're saying if someone's like trapped in that 12-hour workday, you are actually helping them add in this reoccurring model that then gives them the leeway to free up the time to do less in-person sessions. Is that kind of
correct?
Okay.
We're basically saying like there's probably half the clients on your caseload that the only reason you're seeing them in person is because that is the way your business generates revenue. So the shift that we have to help you make is by understanding that there are clients that are going to come in that don't need to be on your schedule, that still need your expertise, and we help you implement that model to be able to do that so that now you're freed up to charge more and work less, really, right? Like the last thing we want you to do is work less and make less. It's like we're just giving you a new mechanism, a new service model within your business to solve the problem for your client.
So you talked about earlier how you're attracting people who are autonomous and who are actually going to take your advice and go execute it. But prior to that, it was like you don't want to babysit, right? Which I'm sure a lot of people feel that. Even like you saying in my world, I mean, like a lot of people want, like I get a lot of people that want a babysitter. So do you help your clients at all with like, how do you attract that type of person, that type of client? And in this new model, because now it makes sense. Okay, so I understand like the whole time thing by adding this model frees up the time, but then attracting the right person to that, because I'm sure that model is great, but we don't want to attract the wrong person to wreck the model.
Correct.
So talk about a little bit about that.
So this is really the beauty of the blended model, right? Is that I can bias my offering to meet you exactly where you're at. So like you might be the perfect client that because of where your symptoms are, because like you are in too much of a fragile state and rep by rep, I need to make a decision. I may actually start you like way more in-person biased. And I may actually help you get to a point where you can be autonomous. So the big thing is like, one, we have to understand that like within our client ecosystem of ideal clients, there's still going to be times where clients aren't a great fit for that prescriptive exercise program.
Yeah.
But when we start to speak to a different healthcare consumer, when we start to speak to somebody who is already training in the gym, is comfortable working with a coach, has already been through, group class, CrossFit class, those are the kind of people that like, they're already making the choice to invest in your health.
Yeah.
And that's really like the big thing in our market is saying like, look, like you're not just going after clients that need physical therapy. We really align with like what we call the performance provider, the wellness provider, because those generally are going after people that are investing in their health at a little bit of a different level.
It's really, yeah, I love that. Like very specific, right? You're not trying to tackle this huge market.
Yeah.
You have a pocket of a market that like actually will resonate, right, with what it is you have to offer. And you're going to get more success, right? Which you need in your marketing, right? And you need in your business to really, really see this throughout. So what other issues are people facing? Like when it comes to this model, is it hard to adopt? Is it fairly easy? Like,
yeah, this kind of goes after the last question you asked as well.
Yeah.
But like the biggest thing that people have problems with is they think that like the client they're working with right now in like their traditional setting, they think like the traditional healthcare consumer, they're like, that person doesn't want this kind of offer. And so it's like, yes, you are correct. They don't. And we're not going to go after them, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing is like, sometimes it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. So it's hard to sell your existing clientele in this model, even if you are already doing a cash-based business. It's hard to sell your existing clientele a virtual offer when you didn't talk about that from the start. So we kind of say like, look, like you may have 5-10 clients that are on your schedule now that would be a good fit that are open to this.
Yeah.
But every new client that comes in, I bet you like 100% of your clients that are on your schedule, I bet you that those people would have been good fits had they known this was the journey. Mm-hmm. But now they're going to kind of feel like you're selling them something else. Mm-hmm. So it's really just like breaking that conditioning that we've been taught in school. That's like, this is how physical therapy is done. Mm. This is how treatments are delivered. This is how you bill insurance. This is how you get paid. It's way too limiting. That's kind of the biggest thing.
Well, people hit a ceiling, right? People hit they're literally in a box and they can't get out of the box, right?
Well, it's funny. Like I started out my career in traditional physical therapy, right? And I worked 10-hour days. And when I started my cash-based business, it was like, I thought I was going to solve my problem by going into cash-based, and I realized I just shrunk it. It was the same problem. It was still just trading time for money, just less time for more money. Mm-hmm. So like for me, it was a big thing that I'm like, how do I create a model for people? How do I create a model for myself that doesn't just replicate the problem on a smaller scale, that actually solves it, that actually creates freedom, flexibility, that drives people to make sure that they can stay in the profession and not just have to scale with more people raising their prices, a bunch of staff that they don't want. Like that's huge for us.
So huge, honestly. It's like, there's so much, like, I guess people in business, we learn about the models, like you said, right? And then it's like, we can't even like, oh, that's it. I can't go out of it. Like it's against the rules. You're breaking the rules.
Yes,
man.
yes.
But that's the beauty of business, that even in an industry like yours, which is very, very like traditional, like you said, people go to school, have licenses, have education. It's like you can design the business how you see fit. And that's actually designed, and that's what you've done, right?
Yes.
Beautifully. And now you're helping other people do it. How long have you been doing this now?
So I started my clinic back in 2015. So that was kind of like the start of this model, this idea, right? It was kind of 2016 was when I really started to think about that and work online. I've been doing this version of my business for about almost 4 years now. And it's funny, man, like when I look at the parallels of how like my business is structured, because I don't practice anymore, but like my coaching business, my mentorship business is structured in exactly the same way. We have a blended model that combines synchronous one-to-one with our clients and asynchronous communication with them to help get them the outcomes. And so it's really cool to kind of live that through the lens of like still feeling authentic to like, I may not be practicing anymore, but I'm still replicating the business model that I'm teaching to this day.
And you know it well. You come from a profession, right?
Yeah.
I find like coaches either come from pain, right, where they solve their own problem and then help others solve that problem, or a profession.
Yeah.
And you kind of did both. You had
Yeah.
pain in your profession and you solved both.
Everything that somebody out there
Yeah.
is going through that like is thinking about working with me, I've gone through. You know, like
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I
yeah.
know what it's like to take your documentation home with you at a long day. I know what it's like to go in and work early. I know what it's like to sit in your car at lunch, take a deep breath and say, oh crap, I have to go back in for the second half of the afternoon. You know, it's like I know those feelings when your entire day cancels and it costs you $1,000. A real quick story, I had a full day of patients and I think it was going to be around an $800,000 day. And it rained so hard in my town that the roads to my clinic flooded.
Oh, jeez.
And so like when you look at like the business and you're like, there goes $1,000 that I was going to make that I
Yeah.
can't really reschedule.
Yeah,
'cause I'm
yeah.
already going to see those clients next week anyways.
Yeah.
Like it was just such a big driving force for me that, you know, I had to do something that gave me a little bit more flexibility.
So that was that like moment where you had to change. You had to have a flood
It
in
was
your own
definitely one of them, man.
So don't wait for flooding to change your business.
It was definitely one of the moments.
Wow.
So.
Is there any other symptom, problem that you help them solve that, you know, someone watching this right now is like, wow, this guy really understands me? Is there anything else that is like that they're writing in their journal, that they're keeping them up at night and wondering like, by the end of 2025, I want this to be solved?
When you don't have something like this in place and you're kind of by yourself, the biggest thing for me was like it became hard to like take vacations, because now I had a choice where it was like I either go on vacation or I make money. And that was like a really sad moment for me where I felt like I had to make that choice. And then the other thing that started to happen was like the vacation actually started to get twice as expensive, because now it's like I have to pay for the vacation and I have the opportunity cost of the time that I'm not actually going to be spending working on the business. And I kind of felt like a prisoner in my own setup. And so like I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to live in that scarcity of feeling like you can't take that risk. You can't take that time off. You can't take as much time off as you want. And so, you know, creating that opportunity for other providers out there has just been huge for me. Because end of the day, man, like our mission is to keep great providers in the profession and stop them from, you know, leaving the industry altogether.
Wow.
So,
I mean, I've learned a lot. And if you're someone watching, listening to this right now, and you're in need of a vacation and you also want to make money, then you need to follow this guy. You need to subscribe. You have a YouTube channel. Is that where people can find you?
Yeah. Ray Gorman DPT is kind of everything where you'll find me. So Instagram is a good way to connect with me.
Is there any leaving messages or thoughts you want to share with everyone before we kind of close off?
I think the biggest thing is, you know, for a lot of people out there, we kind of work with a little bit earlier in the journey consumer. And I think a lot of times it can be scary to invest in coaching. It can be scary to put some money in the pot and not know what the outcome may look like. And you have to kind of trust yourself that like the person you're going to follow is going to lead you there. But like you're never going to feel like 100% certain. There's always going to be this 1% that holds you back from clicking submit, pay, commit, whatever that button says. And you have to kind of push yourself a little bit past that fear if you want to grow, because that's ultimately like what gets you out of that comfort zone is learning some of those lessons from somebody who's been there already.
You're paying for speed.
Yeah.
I mean, you only have one decision. You can decide to stay the same and work 12-hour days, take your work home with you, not go on vacation, or go on vacation and pay twice. Yeah. That's a decision. Or you can decide to do it yourself and spend how many years it is for you to figure it out. I don't know. It depends on, you know, how much time you have to figure it out. Or you can pay someone who's gone through the pain, who's gone through the struggle, who can literally get you to the next steps
Yeah.
twice as fast.
Don't be the best provider out there who's struggling financially. Like, you don't have to be that.
Yeah.
You can have both.
I love that. Awesome, man. Thank you so much
Tyler,
coming
thanks,
on the
brother.
pod. Again,
Yeah.
welcoming us to your villa.
Thank you so much, yeah, guys. You guys are welcome anytime too.
Awesome, man.
All right,
Thanks.
brother.